March the 19th, 2018, a black day for wildlife conservation. The day when Sudan, the rhino bull, died. Thousands of his kind once grazed on the African savannas. Today, only 2 females remain in Kenya. The northern white rhinoceros is currently the most endangered mammal in the world. Our story reveals how we got here. We look into the past, thousands of years, and ahead into the future. We will see how and why humans destroy their environment, and how they try to conserve it with the most ancient and most modern tools. We find out who helps and who harms, and we learn where rhinos find shelter in this overheated world. When they will be unfrozen and what will happen to these tissues, nobody knows. But one thing is sure, they're safer in here than out there. In the 1990s, there were still northern white rhinos roaming and grazing in the wild. Living conditions were ideal in the Garamba National Park.
The rhinos doubled in 8 years, the elephants doubled in 8 years, and things were going great.
Under the close supervision of conservationists and park rangers, the number of rhinos slowly but surely increased. But in 1996, civil war broke out. The park was invaded by heavily armed poachers.
Whole groups of elephants were being gunned down. There were just elephant carcasses everywhere in the area that they'd been, and the rhinos started going down.
By 2004, only 15 rhinoceroses were left. Two years later, patrols found nothing but dried skulls of elephants and rhinos.
It was at one stage I was in the museum with 6 new rhino skulls, one of which was a young female with a very young calf, tiny little skull. Another one was a female that had been pregnant.
In 2008, the northern white rhino was declared extinct in the wild. A few years ago, 5 cavers descended into the Coliboiaia cave in Romania. Passing through several water-flooded channels, they reached an undiscovered part of the cave. But someone had been here before. Long before. Cave drawings. The radiocarbon analysis of the carbon pieces found in the cave showed that the drawings were made more than 30,000 years ago. These prehistoric drawings depict the wildlife of the continent. At that time, the northern part of what we now call Europe was covered by a continuous ice sheet. Big game roamed the tundra: aurochs, mammoths, giant deer, and, incredible though this may sound, the woolly rhinoceros. From the moment that humans organised themselves into groups, utilised tools and learned to control fire, the days of large herbivores were numbered. The woolly rhino was especially vulnerable to the hunt. For this species, the gestation, lactation and rearing of calves lasted 3 to 4 years. this low reproduction rate could not keep pace with the pressures of human hunters. Our Ice Age ancestor, however, did not only destroy, he created. He was more than a hunter-gatherer, he was a storyteller who depicted what he'd seen. He searched for shelter, a place protected from the sun, wind or rain. He was working for posterity. The woolly rhinos vanished, but the charcoal paintings remain. The fate of the northern white rhinos takes on a different shape. Though they're gone from the wilderness, there are still some survivors in captivity. The fact that this rhinoceros exists today is due to a man called by many the Czechoslovak Noah.
A 8 nosorožců dvourohých, zatím bez zvláštních problémů. Já jsem v noci se stal několikrát svědkem toho, že se u jednoho keře buše sešlo 6 až 8 nosorožců dvourohých, což se dřív pokládalo za nemožné, bez konfliktu.
Tak už jsme tady, řekl ředitel zoologické zahrady ve Dvoře Králové, inženýr Vagner.
Josef Vagner, in the 1970s, implemented the most extensive animal collecting expeditions in history. He transported over 3,000 large herbivores to Europe. He practically created a little Africa in what is now the Czech Republic. Among them was Sudan, the northern white rhino bull caught in the wild at a young age. Like most of the animals in the safari park, rhinos soon became accustomed to the cool weather, but they refused to mate. Nobody knew why. Then, in 1980, a freshly captured rhino cow arrived from Uganda. Shortly afterwards, a calf was born. Caretakers realized that the captive rhinoceroses had not reproduced previously because they considered each other family members and not breeding partners. Sudan also had his offspring, Nabire, with this new cow, Nasima. Nasima became the mother of Najin too, whose daughter, Fatou, was born in 2000. 4 decades and no more than 4 rhinos. It's not possible to base a reintroduction program on such numbers, never mind the survival of the species.
I'll just order some.
The experts of the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research in Berlin have dealt with artificial insemination for decades. They're called when animals in captivity struggle to start a family. They've been working with a wide variety of endangered animals. Their results speak for themselves, living offspring all over the world. But they had a hard time with the northern white rhinos. The ultrasound could hardly penetrate through their thick skin, and rhino reproductive organs are large, lengthy and complicated. Researchers were in the dark, literally. The much anticipated rhino pregnancy did not happen. But this team has devoted their lives to saving endangered animal species. They had to look elsewhere for a solution. The southern white rhino. The closest relative of the northern whites was hunted heavily throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. At the beginning of the last century, it was believed to be extinct. Then a small surviving population was found and the species slowly recovered. Today there are around 25,000 individuals worldwide, many of them in captivity.
He couldn't do that to a full-grown rhinoceros, but you're a baby. Come on, Junior, drink your milk. It makes babies big and strong. What a big baby you are.
Taxonomically, northern and southern white rhinos are related as a subspecies. In the genetic sense, however, they may be a separate species. The separation between northern and southern white rhinos happened so long ago that some scientists argue that they should be considered separate species. They differ in the morphology of their legs, ears and snout. Reproduction in captivity, however, is a challenge for both. Easy Boy is a southern white rhinoceros male in his prime. Lulu is a fertile female. They've lived together for years, but still nothing happened between them. Probably wild bulls are also only interested in cows coming from far away, thus avoiding inbreeding. But what is an advantage in the wilderness might become a hindrance in captivity. For millions of years, rhinoceros gametes have been meeting discreetly, hidden by sex organs. But now there's something keeping them apart. They cannot make it, unless they get some help. German scientists and Hungarian veterinarians took up the challenge. They made Easy Boy and Lulu go to sleep. First, they collected the sperm. To do so, they used the electroejaculator, a device commonly applied on cattle and horses. With its electrical impulses weaker than the voltage of a car battery, it's done its job. The result, the sperm of Easy Boy. Within a few minutes, it's put into a special device. And so the cells are on their way into Lulu's uterus. According to some critics, this work does not make any sense. They say that the species should be protected in their original habitat. They should be left to live freely or to become extinct. If conservationists had listened to such opinions, today we would not have the giant panda, the oryx antelope, or the condor. And Layla the rhino would not have been born. Lulu, her mother, has been carrying her for a long time. 16 months after the artificial insemination, it's now time to give birth. In January 2007, Layla came into the world. A 58-kilogram vigorous calf. The researchers succeeded. They helped the gametes along those crucial few meters. But there is a much greater distance between the living rhinos than just a few meters. Layla is going to live in captivity for her entire life. Enclosures will be her world. She will be loved and taken care of. She will get the best medical support and food, but for most of her lifetime she will be separated from other rhinos, most often by thousands of kilometers. The natural mixing of rhino genes has stopped. To sustain a viable population, the gametes have to be somehow preserved and transported. Africa, the last continent where wildlife roams through a vast wilderness. Here, herds of large herbivores are still on the move, and rhinos have hundreds of hectares to move about. A good spot to look for fresh genetic material. A few months after the first successful artificial rhino insemination, researchers went even further. They decided to try and obtain semen from wild rhinos. The southern white rhino bull is the lord of the savannah. Every living creature fears his large physique, his prestigious horn. Everyone except man.
Whoa, okay, good. Let's just keep him down. Back left. The other back left.
Never before has a bull like this one donated his sperm, except to a rhino cow. But the researchers know his weak point. They get out the electro-ejaculator. But the electric impulse, instead of ejaculation, triggers a completely different reaction. The bull wakes up. The giant almost drags the entire team with him. The veterinarians react quickly to the emergency and the animal calms down. The condition of the rhinoceros is stable, and so the intervention can continue.
Besser.
Oh, hier drin passiert ganz viel. Okay, weg. Passieren.
Also wir sind total überrascht von diesem 11 Jahre alten Bull. Der hat uns hier Sperma geliefert, was also mindestens mal dreimal so viel war, wie was die Alten gebracht haben. Normalerweise sind junge Bullen nicht so fertile. Das ist also eine völlige Überraschung für uns hier und wir sind total happy.
Wie viel?
They succeeded.
Oh, very good.
For the first time ever, researchers were able to extract gametes from a wild rhinoceros bull. The invaluable material is in their hands. But if they don't do something, it will be ruined within hours. This is a race against time. Rhino sperm has never been so cold before.
Wenn die Spermaprobe in diese Kammer hereinkommt, dann hat diese Kammer ungefähr im Augenblick 70 Grad, weil der Deckel jetzt weg ist. Idealerweise hat es 100 Grad. Das Sperma ist voll durchgefroren, verändert sich jetzt nicht mehr. Und in diesem Stadium nehmen wir es jetzt hier raus und versenken das dann bei minus 100 Grad.
The cells freeze, they cease to function. At the core of the nucleus, in the DNA, a molecular winter has started, as if time had stopped.
There are many challenges for the conservation of wildlife species. Sometimes habitat protection is important, but sometimes the situations are so desperate that we need to, in order to solve really desperate cases.
The freezers of the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research contain samples of all kinds of animals, from the most common species to the highly endangered. One of these is from a bull southern white rhino named Simba. His sperm was taken at Colchester Zoo in England. The sample was frozen and transported to Berlin, where it spent 3 years in the freezer. Then it was transported to the Budapest Zoo. Once carefully unfrozen, they injected the cells into Lulu, the female southern white rhino. She conceived immediately. The world's first rhino from frozen and defrosted semen. Simba's paternal genome spent years in the freezer. After years of experimenting and developing, researchers were at last ready to apply the procedures on the highly endangered northern white rhino. Unfortunately, time hasn't stood still for the northern relatives. The last northern white rhino calf, the so-called Millennium Baby, was born in 2000. The same year, Josef Vagner, founder of the Dvor Králové Zoo, passed away.
Já jsem pracoval u Toma Mana. U Viktora na jezera byla chaloupka a můj první úkol v Africe byl nikoliv chytat zvířata, postavit barák.
Years went by without a single offspring. Sudan grew old. It was no longer possible to take sperm from him. The Czech Dvor Králové Zoo decided that it was best for Sudan and his family to return to Africa. The surviving northern white rhinos arrived in Kenya in 2009. Ol Pejeta Conservancy became their new home.
I saw these rhinos there and I saw the conditions, and the conditions are very good and very well.
I love the black rhino, southern, northern, I love all rhinos. And I am happy, I'm very happy to welcome our rhino. They are back to Africa again.
Even though Africa changed a lot since Sudan left. Today, rhinos have a chance to survive only with armed guards by their side, day and night. In a single decade, close to 1,000 rangers have lost their lives in the line of duty. As for the rhinos, more than 7,000 have been killed during this period. The reason? The untamable hunger for rhinoceros horn. More precious than gold, though it's nothing more than keratin. This is what our hair and nails are made of. Is the horn somehow more special? It's not more special at all, but in the Far East, many people really believe in the horn. And the belief in non-existent things and the healing effect of that belief works in all of us. This is the placebo effect.
Ezeket a vélt gyógyerő miatt valósan nagyságrendekkel több ember használja vagy próbálja elérni, mint akárcsak 50-60 évvel ezelőtt.
Two glasses of water, a spoon of salt in each. If we give one of them to a patient with a cold and we say, Salt water is good, drink it and you're cured. Nothing happens. If, on the other hand, we say, here is a therapeutic solution that has been proven to work for many patients, things will take an unexpected turn. A significantly high percentage of the patients who believe that the drink has a curative force will be better, in spite of the fact that there is no active substance in the glass. This might explain why the horn has been working as a medicine for millennia. Its healing power is completely based on misbeliefs, yet there is still a huge demand. In Budapest, 2 men bought tickets to enter the Hungarian Natural History Museum. They went straight to the 2nd floor. Apparently, they knew where they were going. They broke off the horn of a stuffed Javan rhino. The Javan rhinoceros once lived throughout Southeast Asia. Its Vietnamese population became extinct by 2011, and today there are only about 50 individuals living on the island of Java. There are none in captivity. The stolen horn is invaluable. Despite extra precautions, between 2011 and 2013, more than 80 horns were stolen. Living or dead, rhinos were no longer safe. They were losing on every front. These forests were once loud with calls like this. This is what the Sumatran rhinoceros, aka the singing rhino, sounds like. In the dense tropical primary rainforest, this is the best way to keep in touch. But the complex and diverse ecosystem was replaced by one type of plant, the oil palm tree. The original vegetation can be found only in small, separated patches.
The Sumatran rhino is going down. That's a real crisis. They exist in Malaysia and Indonesia, and both countries are not putting in the necessary resources to look after those two.
In the Tabin Wildlife Reserve, researchers are looking for the last individuals of the Sabah rhino, a subspecies of the extremely endangered Sumatran rhinoceros. But they search in vain. The forest is empty. The Bornean subspecies of the Sumatran rhino was declared extinct in the wild in 2015. There are 2 specimens in captivity. They're under the guard of the Borneo Rhino Sanctuary. This is Tam, the last male rhino on Borneo. He belongs to a species known as the Sumatran rhinoceros, the closest living relative of the woolly rhinoceros, which died out in the Ice Age. Tam feels that something special is about to happen today. Many strange sounds and smells fill the air. He is hairy and tiny for a rhino at least. Even a very small dose of anaesthetic makes him sleepy. The researchers work with the utmost care.
You guys got a very little time left.
They are constantly monitoring Tam's signs of life. No margin for mistakes.
See, it gets sign over.
After the intervention, Tam swiftly recovers. Caretakers are relieved, but the researchers are disappointed. The sperm quality is not what they'd hoped for. The cell count is low and the gametes are not sufficiently agile. Moreover, there are no suitable partners on the horizon for the sperm. One of the last wild captured representatives was a three-legged female, Puntung. She'd lost one of her forelegs in a poacher's snare.
She was snared when she was very young, a calf, perhaps maybe 1-2 years old, while she was still with her mother, and that's the reason why it could heal over.
She spent her last years in the Borneo Rhino sanctuary. She has received the most attentive care. Her caretakers did everything they could so that she would reproduce, but Puntung could not have any offspring. Tumours were detected in her uterus.
She might got pregnant, and when the calf grows, then she had not enough energy in the forest because she is handicapped. So the baby died due to malnutrition inside the uterus, and this dead fetus was the reason why we have so many pathology, because it intoxified the entire uterus.
She was really a singing rhino. She loved to talk, especially during a good shower. A few years later, Puntung died of cancer. According to the author of an article published by the Washington Post, there's no need to worry. After all, if a species disappears, then it will be replaced by another one. Extinction accompanies evolution. But the formation of a species takes millions of years. Man has not yet been able to create any new animal species. He's much better at the destruction of species, though. The extinction of species has reached astonishing levels. The process is 100 times faster than before the emergence of man. At this rate, there will soon be no large mammals left on the planet, apart from humans and cattle. Anyone who thinks this is okay forgets that life is a network. It's a complex system that we don't fully understand. We know, however, that man's life is directly influenced by thousands of living things, from bacteria to herbs and bees. Those killing off any species are playing with their own lives.
Will they also take some skin biopsy?
The Dvor Králové Zoo has provided shelter for the northern white rhinos for 40 years. It goes without saying that those who are not willing to give up hope meet here. More and more people say that it's all over for the northern whites. But these researchers think on a different timescale. They know that one who gains time gains everything. There are only 2 living northern white rhinos left in captivity, both females and both infertile. The situation is tough, but not hopeless. One plan involves collecting oocytes from the living females. These will be inseminated with the frozen semen samples of the dead bulls. Then the resulting embryos will be implanted in southern white rhinos, and the surrogate mothers will gestate healthy northern white rhino calves. The research team once again turned to the southern white rhinos for help. As if they knew how much was at stake, the rhinos cooperated along the way. Thus, the team developed a new device to efficiently and safely collect the rhino oocytes.
What you saw today is one of the procedures we would need, and we still have to go a long way to achieve what we plan, but that is very important for the northern white rhino. On the other hand, the southern white rhino, and Hope is a representative of southern white rhinos, they're also highly endangered, and this procedure will also help them. So it's a win-win situation for two species, actually.
In France, a world-famous contemporary painter has heard of the rhino's difficult situation. He didn't want to stand by while these animals disappeared. The tools and circumstances have changed a lot over the past 30,000 years, but the point has remained the same. Perpetuation, longevity. The contemporary colleague of the Ice Age cave artist lives further from nature, but he too has seen rhinos. He grew up in Africa, in Mali and in Zaire. Portrayed on the canvas is Nabire. She was the first female northern white rhino born in captivity. She died in 2015, but her ovaries and cells are waiting patiently in the gene bank for what the future may bring. The painter notices every little detail. As long as he's painting, he lives with the rhinoceroses. His life is about them. It takes a long time to create a rhino. Killing one is the work of an instant. One night in March 2017, unknown offenders broke into the Thoiry Zoo in France. A 4-year-old male, Vince, was sleeping peacefully in his enclosure when they shot him point blank in the head. They cut off his horn. This was war, a war between superstitions and science, between wildlife conservationists and organised crime groups, between people and animals. The painting is complete. The artist delivers it personally to the auction venue. During the past few weeks, as he worked on it, it became a personal issue for him.
C'est juste pour la capturer et la donner aux autres, cette émotion. Donc, ce qui se passe, c'est que si je fais quelque chose, et j'espère que c'est un peu le but de mon travail, que j'arrive à reproduire une émotion, si j'arrive à partager cette émotion avec les autres, mon but il est réussi. Donc je travaille pour que cette émotion passe. Capturer quelque chose et le passer à d'autres.
Und dann wären wir bei 9.500 bei Ihnen. Die Nummer bleibt oben. 9.500 Euro jetzt hier hinten am Tisch, dann sind wir bei 10.000. 10.000 Euro sind geboten zum ersten, 10.000 Euro zum zweiten und 10.000 Euro, 10.500. Wunderbar. 10.500 Euro sonst hier hinten zum ersten, 10.500 Euro zum zweiten, 11.000. Sehr gut, läuft. 11.000 Euro werden es überbieten mit 11.500 Euro. 11.000 Euro sind geboten zum ersten, 11.000 Euro zum zweiten und 11.000 Euro zum dritten. Applaus und herzlichen Glückwunsch. Wunderbar. Applaus, Applaus, Applaus.
A five-figure sum this time. The painter donates the total amount for the protection of rhinos. Other people, companies and institutions have also joined the conservation programme. Among the donors were these young girls. They broke open their piggy banks and gave their savings to the rhinos. Support has given momentum to the research. The chilled ovum and frozen sperm cells were transported to Italy. In the Avantea laboratory, the samples were defrosted and the test tube Rhino baby program has begun.
So we work mainly with horses, cows and pigs. And more recently we've been involved transferring this technology to the rhinoceros species.
A rhino oocyte has never met a sperm cell this way before. The critics spoke up again. They complained about the costs of such interventions. They argued that the financial support could be used in a better way. But how expensive is it to save an entire species? So far, this program has cost less than the development of a single sports car.
This part of Africa, there's a lot of corruption. There's been a lot of mismanagement. So poachers don't have much of a deterrent for not killing the animals. In other words, the chances of them being caught is very slim.
In February 2018, Esmond Bradley Martin was murdered in his home in Nairobi, Kenya. He was stabbed to death. Wildlife conservation has suffered an immeasurable loss. A few weeks later, Sudan, the rhino, followed him. The last known northern white rhino bull died peacefully with dignity. The armed rangers managed to keep the poachers away until the last minute. He had quite a life. He was born in Africa, lived in Europe for decades, then returned to his homeland. He left with his memories, knowledge, habits and whimsies. the traditional sense of the word, he is dead. But in a hardly comprehensible way, he received a place in the last refuge of the rhinos. His cells rest deep below freezing point. In a strange biological sense, therefore, Sudan is still alive. Three months after Sudan's death, the international research team is preparing an announcement, a breakthrough.
We are here today to present some of our results, which were yesterday published in Nature Communication.
For the first time in history, under laboratory conditions, from frozen cells, they were able to bring a test tube rhino embryo to life. It does not much resemble a rhino yet, but the DNA molecule spiraling inside contains all the information needed to build the huge body of a rhino. One could argue that there's no point in trying to save the northern white rhinos. It's too late for them. But one should not forget that the southern white rhino had almost disappeared from the surface of the planet.
Das südliche Breitmonaster am Anfang des 20. Jahrhunderts durch einen dramatischen Bottleneck gegangen ist und wahrscheinlich nur ganz wenige Tiere damals in der Lage waren, sich noch fortzupflanzen. Glücklicherweise hat sich die Population dann sehr gut erholt und wir haben heute 20.000 bis 25.000 Individuen.
Thus, if we take into account all the frozen tissues of northern whites, it's still possible to create a viable population. More than 10 years ago, they were able to conceive a southern white rhino artificially. And who knows, a northern white rhino calf might just arrive in this world very soon. Critics also fear that this kind of work might give the wrong impression. That it's not the end of the world if we drive species to extinction, because we can still bring them back with state-of-the-art technology. However, this kind of work might do just the opposite as well, to make us realize that it's not that easy to reverse extinction. But some believe that it's too early to think in the perspectives of science fiction. They think the northern white rhino still exists in the wild.
Well, basically it's this one. Initially the rhinos were doubling in 8 years, then they were staying stable.
After all, Africa is a vast continent. Even the wiliest poachers don't know all its hidden corners. Big game have adapted to be cautious here. It's a matter of life and death. If there are still survivors left, perhaps researchers can locate them.
So Garamba still has a big conservation base going on. And hopefully there will be some rhinos left.
The search continues. Nabire, Sudan. Nimule, Puntung. South, Nasime, Suni, and many others. We can no longer see them or hear their voices. They are the real heroes of this story. They were the ones who contributed to the medical interventions, giving hope with their cells and also with their tameness. The rhino generation that knew more about the enclosures, zoos, caretakers and veterinarians than the spacious savannah. By entering a world well below freezing point, they help to gain some time for their kind. Maybe their genes will be released within a few years and their descendants will live happily ever after. Or they may have to enter a long dream, to overwinter in their deep frozen enclosures for hundreds of years, until the superstitions and misbeliefs that nearly caused their extinction vanish once and for all.